What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to bring you guys my review of Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. We finally get to play it. We finally get to talk about it now that it's out. And boy, I beat it pretty darn quickly. Not like I rushed through it or anything, but it took me about 5.5 hours. Let's just throw that number because I'm sure people will ask anyway. I got a lot to say. Honestly, I have a ton to say. I am pretty conflicted. I'm pretty mixed on this game. I think in order to fully express how I feel, I'm going to have to do spoilers, but to start, and I'll make sure it's clear in the video, I'll say it when we jump over to spoilers, right? But I want to start, we can just try to do a non-spoiler section. Let's talk about this game a little, okay? One of the things that's immediately going to stand out, and it should, and it absolutely does, is the visuals. This game is absolutely, unbelievably good looking. Now, I don't need that in every game I play. You know, I'm a fan of cel-shaded stuff. I'm a fan of pixel, all sorts of different styles. So for me, like, if you have it, that's great. If you don't, that's also great. I think this game is and I don't say this lightly, it's one of the best looking games we have, period. It runs extremely well. Now, I don't know if anything is necessarily pushing it in terms of like high octane action nonstop, but the game runs really smooth. It looks really beautiful, and it's actually kind of hard to put into words just how good it looks. You might have seen online people talk about like, well, I see it actually as an insult, and I guess if you want to go down that path, that's fine, but you see a lot of people saying like this looks like a tech demo, and to be honest with you, there are definitely some sections, and honestly how this game kind of gets from location to location, the camera kind of like pans up, goes up into the sky, comes down, and then Senua is, in a different location, walking. And at times, that actually does look like a tech demo. Like if you showed that at a whatever convention, you might believe that. But it's just insane how good the textures look, how good the water. Of course, I have to rate the water. It's a 10 out of 10. I actually believe it's a 10 out of 10. There's some incredible things they do with water in this game. Just everywhere. Everywhere you go, it shines, whether it's the environment itself or the characters. I mean, it's actually kind of scary how good not only she looks, but all of like Thorgester and like all of them just look so freaking good in this game. So I'm really impressed with that. And I mean, if that's what took them so long to do it, I guess that's what did it. I'm not 100% sure on that one, but no, the game does look outstanding. And well, what's another thing that's outstanding about the game? The sound. I really believe, look, if you played the first game, honestly, a lot of the second game shouldn't be that surprising. What are maybe the strengths and the weaknesses, okay, to be honest with you, but the sound is just, you have to kind of appreciate, and I think it's right to appreciate how good the sound design is, because whether it is the waves, whether it is just the environment in general, walking, you can literally hear the footsteps, but those are the smaller things. Just how good of I think performance everybody does in the game. Senua and her head, a lot of the voices in her head, and not just the two girls that you might have seen like the behind the scenes footage of, but also and I don't want to spoil it, so there's other voices that are going on in her head, and they're all extreme, like this, I don't know, some of them are pretty demonic, and you probably have seen from, even in a non-spoiler way, there's giants in the game. They're pretty demonic in their voices as well. So I just think not only is the performances really good, we'll talk about like the writing quality, but the performances themselves I think are excellent, but the actual sound itself, and you have to play this with headphones. I don't even know how much it would change if you didn't do that. And I mean, maybe I should have tested it for this review, but to be honest with you, if you played the first game, it's not a shocker literally at all. You needed headphones for the first game to get the full experience. It's not even an option for me. You need to have headphones on when you play this game. If you're not, I think the game actually severely drops, because I just don't think it's nearly the same, okay? To be honest, those are the two biggest positives. The rest, I think, is a little bit up for interpretation. Now, I'm going to try to, again, keep this spoiler-free. Let's talk about the structure of the game, with the puzzles and the combat, and then we'll get into some other stuff that we will go into spoilers, okay? So for me, the combat is actually very interesting. Again, I saw a lot of opinions, loud opinions online before I actually played the game, right? So I saw a variety of thoughts on the combat. I think in some ways, the combat is actually better. There is a part of me that likes them focusing on one person at a time, and at the same time, it's a negative. So it's maybe even hard for me to say one or the other. I think they needed to go with one person to focus on the brutality and the realness. A thing that this game does do extremely well is keep things so cinematic at all times. It often, honestly, even for me, oftentimes I would not know when me pushing up, say, on the analog stick stopped and the cutscene started. I wouldn't know, because sometimes it would be like unrecognizable. And in the combat, they really try to do the same thing. And I actually tested it. I died once on purpose. I did die a few other times not on purpose. But sometimes things will actually happen differently. Like if you parry an attack at the right moment, maybe something slightly different happens versus not. The one that I did purposely, a different person was actually killed. A lot of these fights, there tends to be like skirmishes that are going on, around you. So you'll be fighting an enemy, you'll get pushed, say, from somebody else, or somebody will run in front of you, take a hit for you and die, and then you'll fight another enemy. I actually realized that even in the middle of fighting, that can actually change. Like what happens changes, but it just feels so cinematic. So again, okay, well, what's the point? Well, the positives of focusing on one person is you can do that. You can keep things very centralized. You can focus on just one at a time. You can have these dynamic little things where you can see the cuts, and again, somebody can maybe run in and interrupt something, and they can change kind of scenes. That really works well, and I don't think that would work if you had multiple enemies to keep your eye on, right? On the other side of things, I would say the combat is actually more simplified almost in every way. And I'll say what not almost is, but almost in every way. And I don't think that's a good thing. Because again, like on the flip side of things, I did like being able to focus on more than one enemy. You're kind of keeping them in your peripheral, you're switching your camera often, like you're turning around. And I'm talking about the first game, right? You're trying to manage a couple different things. It made it feel more, and I gotta be real here, it made it feel more like a game. When you're only facing one and you're not really worried, again, it's simplified, but I think it's almost too simplified. And in terms of the controls, I mean, they're literally exactly the same, right? Parrying, blocking, dodging, like a light strike or a heavy strike. Now, the one thing this game does change in terms of the combat that's very recognizable or very noticeable is the window is a lot shorter to parry. Now, I was like a parrying god in the first game. This game, not so much. I would get it here and there, and I will say, I guess by making the window shorter, it felt more like you did a good thing. You know what I mean? Like you felt more like proud of yourself almost when you were able to actually parry somebody. I mean, I don't know if that was the right decision. I felt at sometimes it actually made the game too easy. There were several fights that I just like smoked them. There were a couple fights that were a little bit more annoying because it's like, you don't want to mess up, and parrying is probably, like, you might not be able to nail the parry window. So it's like, okay, well, now I'm just going to dodge a bunch, but then you kind of need to parry some. Well, you don't need to, but you probably want to parry some of these enemies. Point being, again, it's kind of a pro, but it's kind of a con. It's hard, honestly. I really believe it's hard to describe it. But I was thinking it. Like, the entire time I was playing the game, I was thinking, yeah, like sometimes I really like the combat, and then sometimes I think, well, number one, it's not much different than the first game, and then the actual changes that they did do, I'm not a fan of all of them. So it's like, I don't know if that took a step forward or actually a step back, or maybe it's just the exact same thing, right? And then puzzles, to be honest with you, is almost kind of the same as well. This game, I will say this actually for sure, the game is much easier than the first game. It's also easier to understand. The story has been simplified, and that's something I think I want to get into spoilers in, so we'll leave that alone. But there was a lot of simplification, if that's the right word, across the whole game, honestly, across the whole game. And I don't know if that was because they wanted a bigger player base. To be honest with you, I don't think that's going to work because it's still kind of a niche thing. And all they really did is, try to open the niche a little bit more to more people. I don't really think that was a great idea. In terms of, again, like the puzzles, it was just easier. I saw that it was going to have that symbol mini game where you look and you see like 3 symbols and you have to find them in the world. For me, I didn't hate them. I'll just say that. Like in the first game, you do so many of them, and it does get repetitive. There's other puzzles in the first game to kind of break it up, but you do that so many freaking times, and it does get old. But I never hated it. Like I don't mind doing it all that much. This time, there's kind of waves. You're going to go through an area where you do one type of puzzle for a while. Then you're going to do another type of puzzle for a while, and it kind of rotates. So there's only a couple of those, glyph puzzle things. But, all right, in some ways, that's better. In some ways, it was worse because I felt it was actually way too easy. The environment gives it away way more than the first game ever did. There's things, people complain about the paint, right? Like the paint on walls to tell you to climb. This game does kind of have that, but I don't really care. But this game, the environment is colored to show you that's where the glyph is. That's how you're supposed to line things up. You can see the coloring in the rocks, and it's like, again, for accessibility, is that something? Yeah, but you know what? There's not that many puzzles in the game, and there's actually other means of showing you that you're close. Like the glyphs will start to appear on screen. You'll see the symbol. You don't necessarily need to see it in the freaking environment, with colors, but they do it anyway. So they kind of have more than one way to show you that you're getting close to figuring it out. I didn't need that. So I just felt for that specific puzzle, it was like really dumbed down, even though they did it far less. That was a good thing, but the dumbed down thing wasn't. The rest of the puzzles, I did think it was kind of cool, like the differences, like the water balls that you would, zoom in on. It would kind of flip the world around or whatever. I mean, I enjoyed them to a degree. I just was like casually going through it. The first game, again, I think was actually kind of challenging at times. I couldn't always find the glyphs. I had to really look, and really try to plan out my moves. And then they would, introduce other elements to make those glyphs harder, even harder as the game went on. In this game, I don't know, I never really got stuck on anything for more than like 5-6 minutes. And one of the times was because I literally couldn't find a door. There was actually a door that led to like the side of the map to find something. And I knew I had to get over there. I just couldn't find the door to get over there. So it's like there was never any point where it was all that challenging. So I don't know. In that way, again, I really think the game was kind of simplified. And I don't really think they needed to do that. So I think that's about as far as I can go without getting into spoilers. So I guess you could say, well, Alex, what do you think about the game? Non-spoilers. I think it is a game. Okay, for those that say it's not actually a game, I do think it's a game. My biggest thing with this is I struggle to rationalize to myself, did the game need to happen? I don't think the game is bad, but I kind of wonder if the game even needed to be made in the first place. And a lot of that does go off of the story, which, we're just about to talk about in a second. But I think the game is good. I overall like the game. I just struggle to defend its reason to exist because I don't know if it's that much of a better game than the first game. It feels very stagnant. Besides, like the visual, jumps and stuff, that stuff is elite. And I mean, they are maybe even pioneering their way towards that, especially with the audio stuff. That stuff is elite. But did it need to happen? And again, a lot of that's on the story. I don't know. I don't know if it needs to happen. So is it worth a Game Pass? Of course. I mean, honestly, this game is a free game. If you have Game Pass, you play it for 5-6 hours, you beat it. It's not going to be for everybody because, yeah, it is a lot of it is just walking, but not all of it. And for those that say that the game is literally just walking, I don't agree with that. I mean, you're not, for the entire game. It is a lot of it, but it's just not the entire game. So I don't know. For me, I think it's definitely worth the Game Pass thing. But I if you don't want to get it for the $50 for the 5 hours and for a game that is not necessarily better than the first game, I would understand that, okay? Let me vent and let me kind of rationalize and walk through the story and the characters, okay? So we're going to go into spoilers right now. So I talk about, does it need to have happened and whatnot. What I really want to focus on in this part right here is there was a theme change between the first game and the second game. And I think beating this game really put it into focus where what they did in this game is have Senua be the helper of others because other people are also misunderstood. Other people are also kind of lost in their own way. And her being the person that she is with her problems, right? She has mental with that issue going on. And her being able to beat it, she really accomplishes so much, and she's such a strong, I think, character, not just like, physically or whatever. Like, she's just a really good character in the first game. The focus here is that she's going to help other people. So a big part of this is the first part of this game, right, is she purposely gets caught to try to kill off basically the slave trade thing that's going on, right? We're not actually even slave trading. They just take the slaves, and later on we realize or we find out they're offering them as sacrifices to basically the head giant, right? So they take people and then they sacrifice them. So her original part is to help others. She's going out of her way. She gets captured on purpose. It kind of goes sideways, but she wants to help them. Then she gets stuck with giants, and she has to take on 2 giants, and then maybe like a metaphor for a giant, but not like an actual giant as the third one. So a lot of this game, again, is her and they say it, they outright say it, where it's like she's working through these things, but she kind of has a handle on it, but now other people don't, and she has the ability to help others. And even if you look at like the arcs they did with the giants, the whole point is just she wants to understand them. The way to beat the giants is to know their name and say it out loud, and then just to understand what they went through. And they're also like mentally going through stuff, just, in general, and she can relate. So that's a huge part of this game. Now, in some ways, I actually think that's kind of genius, especially what they do at the end, where they kind of do this almost like, I thought they were going to have me make a choice. At the very end, right? She has the markings on her face. She has her father's voice. She's very evil, demonic, right? And then she switches back to basically say, that's a part of me. I have to not let that part be who I am. I'm going to be the other person. And for a moment there, I thought they were going to have you pick, like, do you want to do your father's DNA in you or your mother's? But that's really what it's also building to, right? Where she understands that she kind of has both of her parents living in her. The end of the game literally is full circle to she starts to become like her father. She doesn't even realize it until, that moment. So there are some really cool stuff that it really is. Like, there's some awesome stuff that they do. I struggle if it needed to happen because I feel like the first game went the angle of, what is even real? She's going through this like mythology type thing, right? But also she's working through her own, and really that's a reflection. Like, most of it was just her own stuff, and it was like projected out into the world. This game, it's like, no, these are real giants, and these are like real issues going on, and she, now she kind of has a handle on herself. Now she's helping others. First game was a personal tale. Second game was like a helper kind of tale, and I think that does hurt it. Overall, the narrative, I think that hurts it. The pacing also kind of hurt it too. Like, there were times, as was maybe mentioned in other reviews, the first giant, when you have to prove yourself to the hidden folk and you're going around, you're lighting things, that took like an hour. And the pacing was just terrible. It was terrible because after that, there's like 2 hours left of the game, and you just fly by it. There's the trial when you go through the fog and you lose everybody, and they're working through their own stuff. You battle a couple giants on the way. You fight some pretty big battles, right? It actually moves very fast after that. But there's like a 1 hour segment where you're like stuck in a tunnel and you're just lighting things and manipulating the environment, and it just went on way too long. So I have no idea what they were doing there. But the game actually could have been shorter. This game did not need to be 5.5. In fact, it probably could have been 5 or even 4.5 hours, to be honest. So, that was something I didn't like. And then getting back to the story, again, there's strengths. I'm not saying the story is bad. I just don't know if they needed to do it. I think we left Senua in a good place, and it's like, because in this game, her father comes back, like, in her head immediately. Like, she never really got rid of him. And the first game, and I just replayed it like 3 weeks ago, it was pretty wrapped up, where it's like she kind of defeated that premise, or she defeated that, the voice, let's just call it, right? And it's like, well, now he's back immediately, and he even says, like, did you really think you could get rid of me? And it's like, well, yeah, I did, because that's how the first game set it up. So I just think some of it was unnecessary, where it's like, did she need to kind of go back into that struggle? Now, to be fair, she didn't struggle much. Like, for most of the game, even when she would kind of get bogged down in her own mind and her voices would start kind of yelling at her, she fought it off rather quickly, and I thought that is actually pretty good character development, because in the first game, it would ruin her, and it would take her a while to kind of fight through it. This game, she could do it much quicker, right? And because she has grown as a character, so I think that made sense. But it's like, okay, well, did you even need to do it? Now she's kind of doing bigger and better things. So I don't think the story was bad. The characters were rather good. I can't even say half of their names. Like Thorgester is one of the only ones I can say. All of them are good. Like, her companions that you eventually meet, I think they're all very cool characters. I like the idea of the slave thing and, his dad and that whole ending. Like, that was pretty, it was dark. That was one of the bigger twists, I would say, where like they kind of leaned into, not mythology, but they just kind of leaned into something different that they weren't really leaning into for the rest of the game. So I did like the ending, and I saw a lot of people not liking the ending. I liked the ending of this game. I thought, again, it moved really fast last couple hours. It has its moments. It does. And some of the battles against the giants, and even learning why they are the way they are, I thought was actually quite cool. But again, I struggle where it's like, did you need to continue her tale? And then even at the end of the game, like they threw in that like curveball where it's like, oh my God, could she go bad? Could she go like this demonic type, leader kind of thing? She never seemed like she was going to do that through the entire game. That was not leading up to that, but all of a sudden here we are, right? I guess maybe in a way because they kept saying like the father, once he's gone, there's going to be somebody else to step up. There'll always be somebody else. So maybe they were hinting at it, but I always thought it was his son that they were hinting to. I didn't think Senua herself. So, I saw his death also kind of coming where it's like, you're going to have to kill one of these people. He makes a lot of sense to kill, especially when it's you and him in the camp. So some of the stuff was predictable. You kind of get into a rhythm. But again, the story's not bad. And at times it's actually really good, and it can get pretty deep. And I think I can like realize like the deepness of it, and I think I can respect it. But overall, I don't know if it moved the needle. I don't know if it like improved the lore, right? Like the story. When you tell people the story of Hellblade 1 and 2, I don't know how much 2 like enhances it or like adds to. I guess it adds to it, definitely expands it, but specifically with Senua herself, it doesn't really add to her almost at all. So there you go. I think that's everything I wanted to say. If I missed anything, if you want to know something, specific, definitely let me know in the comments. I'll try to answer you guys, okay? Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think. Make sure you're subscribed, all that jazz, and I hope to see you all on the next one.